Even Master Fei could never have imagined. He, a dignified first-class imperial guard of the great king, would be forced to kneel in America, endure unimaginable humiliation, and be publicly stripped and searched. After the inspection, Master Fei walked out of customs. Gazing at the bustling streets, the passing cars, and the towering buildings everywhere, his eyes nearly popped out. The person assigned by the imperial court to meet them was named Qin Fu. Master Fei had done his homework and knew that in America, surnames and given names were reversed. Who is father? Father, father, who is father? Seeing their bewildered expressions, it was clear these people were first-time visitors to America. A fake foreign devil, someone who acts like a foreigner, proactively approached them. Are you looking for father? I am father. Master Fei, accustomed to being served in the Great King, handed his luggage to the man without a second thought. The man told them to wait, promising to arrange a car immediately. Master Fei felt quite pleased, thinking he would still have respect and people to serve him in America. But they waited until dark. Master, have we been tricked? Unfortunately, Master Fei realized it too late. His luggage was gone, his money was gone, and he didn't speak the language. He was completely lost. The local contact, Qin Fu, wasn't deliberately late to meet them. He was delayed by something important. A major case had just broken in Chinatown. 3 days prior, an indigenous man went to Chinatown under the cover of night to trade animal hides. He found a bloody corpse lying on the street corner. Before he could get a clear look, someone slit his throat from behind. This case quickly shocked all of San Francisco because both victims were prominent figures. One was Six Hands, the chief of a nearby indigenous tribe. The other was a white girl named Alice, who had been disemboweled and had her internal organs removed. The next morning, the San Francisco Times received a letter signed by Jack the Ripper. The letter contained only one chilling sentence: very delicious. Even more troublesome was that Alice's father was Grant, a Republican congressman who was preparing for the mayoral election. At this time, anti-Chinese sentiment was high in America due to issues of labor and economic competition. The media used this case to stir up public opinion, creating widespread panic and making the survival of Chinese people in San Francisco even more difficult. After the crime, the police immediately apprehended a suspect, Bai Zhengbang, the son of Bai Zunlin, head of the Zishengteng, Chinatown's largest organization. Bai Zunlin was also the undisputed leader of the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. Everyone knew that something like this happening at such a sensitive time was clearly a malicious frame-up. To clear his son's name, Bai Zunlin spent a large sum of money to hire Qin Fu, an amateur detective known as the Oriental Sherlock Holmes, to solve the case. However, Qin Fu wasn't a professional detective. He was just a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. His father was an imperial physician who later died in the Taiping Rebellion. To escape trouble, his elder brother went to America and became a Chinese laborer. Qin Fu, looking for his brother, also smuggled himself into America. Besides seeing patients, he usually followed his mentor on investigations. This was his first time investigating a case alone. Upon arriving at the Zishengteng, Bai Zunlin recounted the events of that night. 3 days ago, on the evening of August 10th, it was the premiere of the Jinling Fu Opera in San Francisco. He and his son, Zhengbang, attended. Halfway through, Zhengbang left. It was that very night that the bodies of Six Hands and Alice appeared in the alley behind the theater. Someone reported seeing Zhengbang there at that time, but no one knew where he was going or why he left. On the morning of the 11th, Zhengbang was arrested by the police at the docks. At the police station, Zhengbang remained silent about why he left the theater and what he was doing at the docks. To make matters worse, Zhengbang had studied anatomy in England and had a prior record of harassing Alice. After hearing Bai Zunlin's account, Qin Fu immediately realized that the case was too complex and he might not be able to handle it. He was about to quit. Bai Zunlin sternly explained that Republican Congressman Grant, using his daughter's tragic death, had already formally proposed legislation to the Assembly to ban all Chinatowns in California. In 4 days, he would represent the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in the Assembly Hall. If this bill passed, they would propose it across the entire federation. At that time, Chinese people across America would have no place to live. Therefore, this case not only concerned the survival of the Bai family but also the very existence of all Chinese people in America. Qin Fu hadn't realized how serious the case was. As a Chinese resident in America, he couldn't openly refuse and could only agree for now, ready to escape at any moment. He couldn't bear such a huge responsibility. This time, Grant was uniting with labor unions to incite anti-Chinese sentiment among American workers. The Chinese come here and first they take over a street, then they take over a school, then they take over a hospital. Then they take over a city. Disease will spread along with crime, extortion and murder. American laborers were furious. They held placards and blocked the entrance to Bai Zuanlin's crematorium, preparing to attack the Chinese inside. At a critical moment, Bai Zuanlin appeared. "I am American citizen. This is my property. I am American citizen." Bai Zuanlin loudly questioned the Union leader. "Thomas, does my property not receive protection under the Fourth Amendment? What you are doing violates American law." Grant retorted angrily, "American law doesn't allow your son to kill my daughter." The crowd stirred again, on the verge of losing control. Bai Zuanlin's friend, Wyman, arrived just in time. He was a well-known capitalist in San Francisco and had many business dealings with Bai Zuanlin. Under his threats and inducements, Grant could only retreat for now, as Wyman was one of the behind-the-scenes sponsors of his election campaign. Bai Zuanlin handed the crematorium's land deed to Wyman, asking him to help smooth things over and bail his son out of prison. Wyman feigned reluctance but eventually accepted the deed. Meanwhile, Qin Fu finally seized the opportunity and escaped from the outhouse. However, as he landed, he fell onto an indigenous young man. Their eyes met, and sparks flew. Qin Fu hadn't expected this indigenous-dressed young man to speak Hebei dialect. "You, officer, Chinese? You are actually Chinese." Qin Fu quickly realized that this person was a Gi, the son of the deceased indigenous chief Six Hands. For some reason, this guy believed that the first person he bumped into could help him find his father's killer. Wait, something's not right. How does an indigenous person speak Hebei dialect? But Qin Fu hadn't figured it out yet when he was surrounded by Bai Zuanlin's men. A Gi had the eyes of a hawk, the ears of a wolf, and the speed of a leopard, but he was pounded before he could show off for 2 minutes. Just as Qin Fu was about to be taken away, a Gi instantly went berserk, fending off the thugs. Eventually, Qin Fu was taken by a Gi to his tribe. "We've arrived." "Arrived where?" "My feet are killing me." Qin Fu's gaze was drawn to an indigenous girl. The girl seemed to be interested in him too. A Gi seized the opportunity and said, "If you can find the killer, I'll marry this sister to you." The tribal chief rambled on, and a Gi added more incentives, saying, "Giving you the sister isn't enough. I'll give you the land too." Qin Fu was overjoyed. Deal. Afterward, Qin Fu learned that a Gi's parents were Chinese laborers who came to America to build railroads. When he was 5, his parents died in an accident, and he was knocked unconscious by an explosion. It was the chief of the indigenous tribe, Six Hands, who saved him, taught him various skills, and gave him a second life. So, he had to find the killer and avenge his father. "If you run again, I'll cut off your balls." Saying that hurts our feelings a bit. To get the chief's sister and that piece of land, and to save his own balls, Qin Fu could only take a Gi to find Bai Zuanlin. There, Qin Fu finally met Master Fei, the person he was supposed to meet. As they spoke, Bai Zuanlin's son, Bai Zhengbang, walked in. With him was Zheng Shiliang, his classmate from his studies in England. Upon seeing Zheng Shiliang, Master Fei immediately became agitated. Because his trip to America was under the Empress Dowager's decree to cross borders and arrest the leaders of the Xinjiang Hui, Sun Yat-sen and Zheng Shiliang, to nip the revolution in the bud. Master Fei immediately ordered their arrest, but this was America, not the Great King. Master Fei assessed the situation and wisely decided to leave first. Just then, a group of armed Irish gangsters arrived at the Zishengteng. They had lost a batch of guns, and there was evidence that the guns had been stolen by Bai Zhengbang and were hidden in Chinatown. At this point, Qin Fu and a Gi used both persuasion and coercion to try and get Bai Zhengbang to talk. They wanted to know where he went and what he did that night. But Bai Zhengbang refused to say anything. Zheng Shiliang, worried about his safety, spoke for him. That night, they went to the Irish gang's place to steal guns. The reason for stealing guns was that Zheng Shiliang had joined Sun Yat-sen's Xinjiang Hui. The time for an uprising was approaching, and they urgently needed weapons. Moreover, the Irish gang had always been hostile towards the Chinese, and these guns were precisely what they used to raid and attack Chinatown. As for why he went to the docks, it was simple. After stealing the guns, he needed to find a safe place to lay low. However, these reasons couldn't clear Zhengbang's name. They had to find the real killer. Qin Fu and Agi immediately set off to investigate. Bai Zunlin was furious with his son. He felt that the most pressing matter wasn't revolution but clearing his name. Protecting Chinatown, preserving the Zishengtong, and safeguarding the Chinese people in America. But Zheng Xiliang said, "This place can't protect us anyway. Our hope shouldn't be here. Don't talk about revolution anymore. If you could truly change anything, we wouldn't have had to cross the ocean and come here begging for scraps. I've toiled here my whole life just to earn respect." Hoping not to be bullied by white people anymore, Bai Zhengbang pulled open the window, pointed at the Chinatown outside, and shouted, "This outside is the Chinatown you've protected for decades. All I see are brothels, opium dens, and gambling houses. Have our people truly become strong here? If hope isn't over there, and not here, then where is our hope?" Bai Zunlin was stunned by his son's question. He was indeed worthy of the name Zhengbang, meaning rectify, but this hope was too far away for him. He only wanted his son to be safe. On the other side, Qin Fu and Agi geared up, but they couldn't maintain their cool for more than 3 seconds because they had no idea where to start the investigation. Qin Fu suddenly remembered that his mentor once told him that the basic principles of all industries are similar. The key is to magnify logic and details. Traditional Chinese medicine emphasizes Wang, when, Kai observe, listen, ask, feel, observe the complexion, listen to sounds, ask about symptoms, feel the pulse. Qin Fu decided to start with Wang observe. They arrived at the crime scene and quickly found clues. Agi smelled only his father's blood, meaning Alice wasn't killed here. This wasn't the primary crime scene. Furthermore, there were no female footprints, only those of a super large person. Qin Fu quickly deduced that someone carried Alice's body here to dispose of it. Based on the footprints, the person who disposed of the body and the person who attacked Six Hands were not the same. Next, they infiltrated the morgue and saw Alice's body. Instead of smelling, they tried to listen to what the body had to say. Before Qin Fu could react, Agi had already examined the corpse: broken left elbow, swollen outer hip, bruised ribs, fractured back of the head, broken cervical spine. But the open head trauma is the main cause of death. Agi had dissected animals with his father and was well versed in understanding bodies. Qin Fu was very impressed. Based on the autopsy results, Alice had been beaten before her death. Agi also found some human tissue under the corpse's fingernails, indicating she had struggled with the killer, whose arm must have been scratched. Just then, Agi smelled a strange odor from the top of the corpse's head. They then found a piece of wood splinter in the injured area, which was likely a residue from a wooden stick. This suggested that it wasn't a simple murder but an act driven by deep hatred for the victim, who was beaten to death. Other than that, there were no further clues on the body. Qin Fu and his team found Alice's father, Grant, wanting to ask if Alice had any enemies. Grant replied, "My daughter had no enemies, except for those yellow people who want to take our land and resources. So I will definitely send the murderer to the gallows." Qin Fu found it strange that despite his daughter's tragic death, Grant showed no signs of sadness, only deep-seated hatred for the Chinese. It seemed asking wouldn't yield anything. They would have to feel or touch, meaning they would have to investigate in person. That night, while Grant was away, Agi scaled the wall, taking Qin Fu into the house. They entered Alice's room to search for clues. Qin Fu quickly found a small girl's dress in the wardrobe. He found this very strange since there were no children in the house. Then, he saw a man's photo on the table. It was by Zhengbang. Agi didn't find any clues, but he stared intently at a photo. It was a commemorative photo of the completion of the American Transcontinental Railroad. Qin Fu didn't understand why he was shedding tears while looking at this photo. But for now, finding clues was more important. Soon, they found a damaged mark on the stair banister. Combining all these clues, Qin Fu had a theory. But the immediate priority was to confirm it with Bai Zhengbang. Based on Agi's calculations, Bai Zhengbang should be at the Jinling Fu Opera House now. They quickly found Bai Zhengbang and Zheng Xiliang, but also ran into Master Fei and his entourage. Qin Fu remained calm and urged Agi to transform. But Agi's transformation ability had a cooldown period. He could only do it once every 2 days. As Master Fei approached with his 2 subordinates, everyone held their breath. Just then, the wooden board behind Master Fei suddenly flipped. and his two subordinates turned into white old women. It turned out to be the Jinling Fu's great living person transformation trick. Master Fei had no helpers and could only be passively beaten. His two subordinates appeared in a cabinet on the stage, and the audience erupted in applause. Jinling Fu was dumbfounded. After the chaotic great living person transformation spectacle, Qin Fu finally had a chance to question Bai Zhengbang. You and Alice were lovers, right? That morning you went to the docks not to escape, but to elope with Alice. This time, Bai Zhengbang didn't deny it. He had met Alice while studying in England, and they fell in love at first sight. But their love was destined to be impossible because the Chinese Exclusion Act explicitly prohibited Chinese men from marrying white women. So they could only meet in secret. Bai Zhengbang recounted what happened that night. On the afternoon of the 8th, he received a letter from Alice's maid, Amanda. Alice arranged to elope with him at the docks at 6 o'clock on the morning of the 11th. The gun theft in the Irish neighborhood on the evening of the 10th was pre-arranged. So he had to deliver the guns to the theater first. Then go back to pack his luggage, and arrive at the docks before 6 in the morning. However, he didn't wait for Alice. He waited for the police. After hearing his account, Qin Fu had a general understanding of the case. Now they just needed to find the maid named Amanda to know the truth. Seeing Bai Zhengbang's hasty departure, disregarding his own safety to transport the guns to China to support the uprising, Agi was somewhat confused. You were born and raised in America, and you've never been to China. Why are you getting involved with the Revolutionary Party? Bai Zhengbang replied, I've never been to China, nor have I worn a queue, but they still call me Pigtail. Alice and I truly loved each other, but we couldn't be together openly. There are too many problems in this world for which I can't find answers. After meeting Xiliang, I realized that Chinese people are always protected by a part of them. They do what they know is impossible, and they are the hope of China. Perhaps the answers I can't find, they can give me. Just as Qin Fu was preparing to look for Amanda, another bloody murder occurred in Chinatown. This time, the victim was a female Chinese medicine practitioner named Lin Yui. The police once again pointed the finger at Bai Zhengbang. Qin Fu and his team rushed to the crime scene and found that the incision this time was not as clean as before, and the organs were haphazardly removed. This indicated that the killer was someone else. The case was once again sensationalized by the media, making Bai Zhengbang the prime suspect. However, he disregarded his own safety, intent on getting those guns out. What they didn't know was that Master Fei, to capture Zheng Xiliang, had chosen to cooperate with the Irish gang and revealed the location of the hidden guns. Fortunately, Bai Zhengbang and his group had already moved the guns. Qin Fu and Zheng Xiliang coordinated to stage a diversion for the Irish gang. When the gang pursued the carriage, they found no guns inside. The enraged Irish gang locked them up. But no matter how much they tortured him, Zheng Xiliang did not reveal the guns' whereabouts. Qin Fu knew they were in grave danger there. Agi performed a ritual, summoning a pigeon. We're going to die. We're going to die. Even facing being buried alive, Zheng Xiliang clenched his teeth. Just as the dirt was halfway up, and no savior had arrived, Qin Fu lost patience with Agi's ritual. We're almost dead, and you're still looking for a pigeon. Just then, Master Fei's subordinates brought news. The Eight-Nation Alliance had invaded Beijing, seized the Forbidden City, and Consort Zhen had committed suicide. The Empress Dowager and the Emperor's whereabouts were unknown. As a loyal subject of the Great King, Master Fei's mind went blank upon hearing this. His lifelong belief instantly crumbled. The Irishmen on the side were clamoring that they would loot all the treasures of the Forbidden City. They said they would sleep with the Emperor's wives. Master Fei could no longer tolerate it. The next second, a flying knife pierced an Irishman's throat. His two subordinates also attacked. In an instant, severed limbs flew into the pit, making Qin Fu scream in terror. The gang leader reacted and continuously shot at Master Fei. Master Fei was hit by multiple bullets but still charged forward, stabbing the gang leader multiple times. Before collapsing, his face was filled with the resolve for revenge. Soon, his two subordinates also fell after being shot. Just then, the indigenous tribal chief, having received news, led his people in. The Irishmen scattered, and Qin Fu and his team were finally saved. Before leaving, Master Fei had a final surge of strength and grabbed Qin Fu's pants. Looking at the deceased Master Fei, Qin Fu and Zheng Xiliang were filled with emotion. A common man's rage can draw 3 feet of blood. If China had more hot-blooded men like Master Fei, how could the revolution not succeed? No sooner had they escaped than Qin Fu and his team received news. Bai Zhengbang had committed a public murder and was shot dead by the police on the spot. This afternoon, the police department received news that Bai Zhengbang appeared at the crematorium. Grant immediately led his men there and found a man wearing the same clothes as Jack the Ripper had killed Alice's maid, Amanda. Facing the police's guns, the man resisted and fled. Grant had no choice but to shoot. The man was hit and fell into the pond. Soon, a body floated to the surface. It was Bai Zhengbang, wearing the Ripper's clothes. Facing such a situation, Bai Zunlin had nothing to say. He could only take down the Zishengtung's sign. Countless American laborers unrestrainedly rushed into Chinatown, smashing, looting, and burning. Watching his years of hard work turn to dust, Bai Zunlin was heartbroken but helpless. Tomorrow, Chief Lance would announce the case's conclusion in the square, leaving them little time. Qin Fu and Agi immediately sprang into action. Upon observation, Agi found that the wounds on Amanda's body were the same as those on the female Chinese medicine practitioner Lin Yui. This meant that the killer of Alice was one person, and the killers of Lin Yui and Amanda were another. They went to Amanda's residence and found a traditional Chinese medicine pot in her home, containing leftover herbal medicine for pregnancy. Clearly, this medicine wasn't for Amanda. Combining all the clues, Qin Fu already had a theory about the case. However, there was still a tricky question. How did the killer frame Zhengbang after killing someone at the crematorium? Qin Fu thought of the Jinling Fu's great living person transformation magic trick. That day, the police only saw someone dressed like Zhengbang. When Grant and his men arrived, that person pretended to flee. Grant fired a blank, and the person faked being shot. Jumping into the water and releasing Zhengbang's body, which had been prepared beforehand. Therefore, there must be a hidden space under the pond. Agi jumped into the pond and indeed found that the pond led elsewhere. He also found a brooch. Zheng Shiliang immediately recognized it as the Irish Union's brooch. Clearly, their deduction was reasonable, but they still lacked crucial evidence. The only solution now was to dissect Bai Zhengbang's body. The next day, the chief publicly announced the investigation results. Bai Zhengbang was the true culprit of the serial murders. Qin Fu and his team arrived at the scene, stating that there was another truth to the case and that they had already gathered new evidence. Please welcome our witness, Mr. Bai Zhengbang. Soon, Bai Zhengbang's body was brought to the scene. Agi began to reconstruct the truth of the case. On the evening of August 10th, 2 victims died in Chinatown. One was Grant's daughter, Alice, and the other was the indigenous chief, 6 Hands. After examination, the knife wounds on the bodies were clean, indicating an experienced hand. On August 15th, another victim appeared in Chinatown. The female Chinese medicine practitioner Lin Yui also disemboweled. However, the incisions on her body were crooked, just like those found on Amanda's body yesterday. From this, we deduce that your Jack the Ripper is actually 2 different people. When the police entered the crematorium yesterday, they didn't clearly see that the person standing next to the body was Bai Zhengbang. It was only after Grant fired that Bai Zhengbang's body appeared in the pond. What if Bai Zhengbang's body was already hidden in the water, and the fake Bai Zhengbang entered the pond and then swapped it with Bai Zhengbang's body? This is like a magician's sleight of hand. Furthermore, we found a hidden space in the pond where someone could hide, and we also found a Union badge. The name on this badge is indeed the Union President Thomas. Mr. Thomas, may I ask what you were doing in the crematorium's pond? Then, Qin Fu borrowed Grant's gun and fired at prepared pork at different distances to demonstrate that different shooting distances leave different wounds on the body. Bai Zhengbang's body had obvious burn marks, indicating he died from a close-range shot within 1 meter. Moreover, the time of death was not yesterday morning, but the night before. More importantly, we examined Bai Zhengbang's body and found his jaw clenched. Facial muscles spasming, limbs rigid, a faint smile on his face, lividity appearing bright red, and his nose and fingertips blackened. When vinegar was applied, his face turned a lotus flower color. After dissection, both his lung lobes and heart showed pathological bleeding. All of this indicates that Bai Zhengbang's true cause of death was freezing. There are few buildings in San Francisco with ice cellars. Grant's house happens to have one. We also learned that Grant participated in the Civil War, where he was a military doctor. Alice's chest was opened by his own hands. This statement caused an uproar among the spectators. Qin Fu continued, it is well known that Grant is running for mayor. And his new policies include permanently supporting the Chinese Exclusion Act, banning Chinatowns, and prohibiting any commercial organization or individual from employing Chinese people. These policies have won him countless votes, especially the support of labor unions led by Thomas. What you may not know is that his daughter, Alice, had a Chinese boyfriend Bai Zhengbang. Zheng Shiliang produced the letter Alice wrote to Bai Zhengbang, proving that Bai Zhengbang went to the docks not to escape but to elope with Alice. Agui took over the explanation. Now I'll tell you why the killer impersonated Jack the Ripper. This question was only answered when we went to the home of the female Chinese medicine practitioner Lin Yui. Her clinic was where Bai Zhengbang and Alice used to meet. But once their rendezvous was discovered by Grant, he flew into a rage and almost killed Bai Zhengbang. So, Alice's real cause of death was because she was pregnant with Bai Zhengbang's child. Alice, knowing she was pregnant, planned to elope with Bai Zhengbang on the morning of the 11th. Just as she was about to leave, Grant pushed her down the stairs. We found blood-stained wood splinters in Alice's hair. These splinters perfectly matched the damaged stair banister in Grant's home. Furthermore, we found some human tissue in Alice's fingernails, left when she struggled with the killer. Mr. Grant, I suspect you have a bloodstain on your left hand. You used this Jack the Ripper tactic to increase national attention to the case and smear the Chinese, earning you votes. Most importantly, you covered up your daughter's pregnancy. Bai Zhengbang died without knowing Alice was pregnant with his child. Grant suddenly spoke. No, he knew. That day he actually came to question me. I told him Alice was pregnant with his bastard child, so I couldn't forgive him. He rushed at me and we struggled. I shot in self-defense. I killed Bai Zhengbang, but Alice was an accident. That day I saw her packing her luggage to elope with Bai Zhengbang. I desperately tried to stop her, and she actually told me she was pregnant with Bai Zhengbang's child. I lost control in a fit of emotion and accidentally pushed her down the stairs. I disposed of the body in the alley behind Chinatown. At that time, an indigenous person suddenly appeared, and my assistant Thomas had no choice but to kill him. Agui continued his analysis. The first person to know about Alice's pregnancy was Lin Yui. The second person who knew everything was the maid Amanda. Both of these people were killed by Thomas. But clearly, his knife skills are not as good as Grant's. Seeing the truth exposed, Grant shot himself and died. Thomas was arrested on the spot. In fact, Kin Fu and his team were able to obtain crucial evidence thanks to the help of Chief Lance. Agui asked him why he helped the Chinese. Lance replied, I didn't help anyone. I just wanted to uphold the fairness of the law. Meanwhile, Bai Zunlin, as the representative of the Chinese Chamber of Commerce, was testifying in the San Francisco Assembly. His statement concerned the implementation of the Permanent Exclusion Act and the survival of all Chinese people in America. Facing biased and aggressive white congressmen, Bai Zunlin spoke passionately. Who built this transcontinental railway? One hammer strike at a time. Chinese took the hardest and the most dangerous jobs. 1 out of every 10 of our people died while building 70% of the first transcontinental railroad in America. They say there was a Chinese worker on every railroad tie. This isn't exaggeration, it's true. Kin Fu and Agui, carrying the photo of the railroad's completion from Grant's house, arrived at the assembly hall. Bai Zunlin said, at that time, my parents and Agui's parents were all railroad workers who built this railway. That day, a tunnel exploded. My brother, Old Fourth, and Agui were the 3 survivors of that accident. But in this famous completion photo, there isn't a single Chinese face. Are we not worthy, gentlemen? I ask you to look at the marble floor beneath your feet, these chairs and tables, and this magnificent dome. All of them were made by the hands of the Chinese people. You discriminate against T this moment. My only son's body lies exposed outside. He was born in America, grew up in America. My son and I have dedicated our youth and lives to this country, but what did we ultimately get? We got an exclusion act that was never discussed with any Chinese person. You say we are rats among animals, but I believe that everyone present here has benefited from the labor of rats. Your food, clothes, houses, and even transportation, which of them can exist without the Chinese? We are all outsiders. All men are created equal. That is the spirit of American independence, the very foundation of this nation. Where is equality? After Bai Zunlin's passionate speech, many congressmen voted against the bill. The Permanent Chinese Exclusion Act did not pass. Although Chinatown was not banned, all property under the Zishengteng was confiscated. Bai Zunlin decided to return to China. Before leaving, he found his old friend, Mr. Wyman. Grant was dead, and the truth seemed to have surfaced. But Bai Zunlin knew that the true mastermind was not Grant, but his good friend, Wyman. Because Grant could never have conceived of using the Jack the Ripper method to frame Zhengbang. Nor would he have known the crematorium so well to create that diversion. This person not only had to know how to control public opinion but also had to be a master of magic. Wyman fit all these conditions perfectly. Since the conversation had reached this point, Wyman stopped pretending. If Grant had won, his policies would have prohibited any commercial organization from employing Chinese laborers, which would have harmed Wyman's interests. So, he had to eliminate Grant. At the same time, he also needed to deal with the enemy of capital, the union leader Thomas. Because only by controlling the union could he long-term and legally use cheap Chinese labor. That day, Wyman visited Grant and happened to see him push his daughter down the stairs, so he devised this series of poisonous schemes. One could say it was killing 3 birds with 1 stone, successfully eliminating Grant and Thomas, and incidentally acquiring the crematorium's land. Wyman merely directed from behind the scenes and got everything he wanted. In his own words, there are only 2 operating rules in this world: power controls everything, and money controls power. And he was the latter. Even Chief Lance was bribed by him. Otherwise, why would he provide crucial evidence to the Chinese for the sake of so-called justice? Before leaving, Bai Zunlin obtained a permanent residency permit for Qin Fu and told him, "This place has many things worth learning from. Learn the strong techniques of the barbarians. There will be a long future ahead, 30 years on the east, 30 years on the west. One day we will surpass them."